So, welcome, episode 2, Founders Frequency. We said last week, since the government is shut down, that we were going to guess about how many days it was going to be shut down. And it appears that we were all overly optimistic. So,
Yeah.
Mike, you said 9. Amina, you said 17. I was going to chicken out and just bet the over, but I picked 22 days. As we're recording this, we're on day 16, I think. Amina, you need some people to really help you out if you're going to be right.
Yeah.
I guess we get to revise those. Mike, you got a revision guess for us?
Give me a few moments. I'll give it to you by the end of the show.
The end of the show.
It feels like somebody's going to just have to give up and kind of like, it doesn't seem like we're moving towards any kind of compromise. It seems like it is a very like, it's shut, it's not. So it almost feels like just whenever somebody decides to back down, which we don't exactly have a habit of doing these days. I don't know. It's it's challenging, and I think there's so many parts of the government that are open that I don't hear any real public outcry over it when I watch stuff, and I think there's still a lot of core services that are operational. So I don't know. I guess I'll revise my guess. I'll let y'all have time to revise. I'll say 35 days is my revised guess. Qualified by the fact that I don't know what I'm talking about. I have no idea. But
I'm going to say 28.
you can say 28. All right.
No, 28.
I'm going to be crazy. I'm going to say 42.
42. All right. Okay. Now I'm the moderate one all of a sudden. So now I'm in the middle. So look, I as everybody talks about government shutdown and all of that, we talked a little bit last time about how has that impacted current operations, all of that. I guess the new question is for us, for other people that have GovCon companies, how is that impacting the future? Like, how's that change future strategy? If it does.
We started our business in during sequestration, right? So we started with in turbulent political times, right? With the 30% cut or whatever that was supposed to come across the top, and so we felt that then. This time, we're a little bit more experienced, I think, right? As a group, and so weathering this environment hasn't been the worst, but I think it just really depends on where you are right now in the government, right? Like, we talked, I think, once before about how, entire agencies are gone, right? And so during a normal shutdown, those would be the people that would be impacted the most, right? And so I think there's a point there to be explored. And so yeah, I mean, as far as I see it, we're bidding things that we're approaching things that are 2 years out, right? 2 years, 3 years out. And so what happens now, yeah, sure, it sucks. And I was like, but the thought of it, I guess, is that in 2 to 3 years, right, when a lot of these things get awarded that we're looking at now, right, we're being awarded things now that we were pursuing 2 or 3 years ago, right? So if we're not, and as a small business, we don't have we don't have a 10-year outlook per se, right? But
Right.
2 to 5 years of what we're going to do, where we think we should focus. I think has gotten us to this point, right? We do a lot of law enforcement support and a lot of what's a good way to say it? A lot of critical infrastructure stuff. So that keeps us busy and employed during tough times. Like, I think the agencies that you choose to support or get lucky enough to support, or however you want to approach it, I think the agency really ends up dictating how things go for you, like during a shutdown.
Which is, so if I was going to pick something that I think it might impact long-term strategy wise, and this is both for companies and also I think we're going to see it when valuations come for acquisitions, is it used to be very common for you to either be customer aligned or work type aligned, where I've got a software development group and I've got a network group, or I've got a mission services group and a technology group, or I'm customer aligned. This is my Department of Justice business. This is my Department of Labor business. This is all of that. I could see people shying away from customer focused teams from an organization standpoint, because this seems to pretty broadly hit customers when this happens, right? Because as there's been more political motivation around policy with the agencies and with contracting, if you had a big EPA team right now, that's a risk. If it was embedded in a software development organization, you could see it as down pressure, but it would be more difficult to ascertain, okay, all these people might disappear if this agency shut down or went away. So I think it might be for large businesses and for acquisitions, they might look at or try to organize more by line of business, because it's easier for a line of business to pivot to other customers than it is for a customer team to pivot and do something else. If you have a software development team, you can tell them, don't bid these agencies work or focus on something else. Whereas if you're aligned by true account focus, what else are you going to tell your Department of Labor team to do? They're in
Yeah.
a Department of Labor team. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but to kind of also to what you said, it's real hard as a small business to really pivot. Like, there's a certain amount of luck to what you end up winning or having, and just because you decide now, you can't pivot away from a customer right now for 6 months from now. Like you said, it's 2 years away or 3 years away. And
And
so if
and
you're small, if you're negatively impacted, you just kind of there's a bad chance that you're out of business. If you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, you can kind of edge towards trying to go to a different customer set, but maybe we'll see more small businesses that really are capability focused, because it's such a gamble if you really go all in on one customer and that customer gets all their budget wiped out. But I don't know. Like you said, a lot of times it happens. I've talked to so many people that they started their business based on where they were, whether that was state or justice or CMS or wherever. That's just where they were, and that's where they started. And the agencies that I worked at didn't have any budget at all. Farm Credit Administration, the U.S. Office of Special Counsel. I never thought about it when I was working there as a federal employee that, like, they don't do any contracting work. Like, their budgets are non-existent. But I didn't think about that back then.
yeah, the focus by customer versus like line of business or by delivery, right? To say, like, we're enterprise operations or we're cybersecurity or whatever it may be, um, is an interesting approach. I think when we first got started, we were stuck with that, right? Like
Mhm.
with are we going to be a niche company that focuses on this specific technology, and then try to proliferate that way, or are we going to look at it and say, hey, like, we have a unique understanding of this customer or these customers, and we should, fashion our solutions or our unsolicited proposals to these types of folks because we think that we'll have success with these types of folks. And I think it was a combination of two. I remember there was a program manager that we were horse trading, for lack of a better term, positions, like, hey, so you could take all these .NET things and I'll take all this cybersecurity stuff, then you don't have to worry about it. And so it actually ended up working out really well for us over time, where we pivoted from just saying, hey, listen, we know a customer, versus saying, I think it'd be a good idea if we stop spending a bunch of time doing these things and let's focus on being experts at this thing. And so 10 years later, yeah, beneficial.
So Mike, I ask you this, and Amina, does the shutdown and all of this, does it change the advice you would give somebody if they said, hey, should I get into GovCon? Does it change what you would tell them? Mike, would you tell them something different?
Oh, I thought
Yeah.
I was giving Amina the opportunity to answer. So, I, I, I personally love GovCon. I know that sounds crazy, and I'm not being, um, I'm not being insincere. I like competitive things. I'm competitive by nature. So I think it's each person, right? I think that there are probably a lot of people who are in GovCon to own one, who I would tell that you probably don't want to really own one once you realize all the additional things you have to do, right? Like the idea of I'm gonna get an 8A and sell it for $100 million or whatever the fantasy was. I think that's, you know, that's a bygone era, right? And so it depends, right? Some people might have the right stuff or a solution, or a skill set that is hard to find, and they happen to have a pocket niche of 5 or 6 people that do this thing, and those people decide to get together and do a company. Then, you know, of course, like, you know, great things could come in the services industry. But when things like this happen, you know, if the key person that has you there, that bought this solution, that was the driver of it, is now gone, right? Because they're furloughed, or that position no longer
Right.
exists, or they retired. You know, now it's much harder to prove your value, because who are you going to prove it to? There's nobody at work, right? So I guess it depends. I mean, it depends, but I would encourage. I'm big on entrepreneurship, so I would encourage everyone to explore it. I mean, so I guess to answer your question is yes. I still would tell anyone who was interested in it, I would tell them that this is probably one of the best times to get into it. Right? You know, people are leaving, people are finding it too
Yep.
difficult to be in. Um,
Those are good points. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Um,
I'd say the same thing.
yeah. So Amina, let's say a friend of yours approaches you and you've been in GovCon a little while now, and they said that they thought that it might be, what do you think, is this a decent career field? So whether it was to start a business in GovCon or just to work in GovCon, are you what do you think you'd tell them?
I would definitely tell them to, to take that leap and to do it. I think that there's plenty of career paths, and all of them have their downsides, or the forgive me, I can't think of the word, but like, the things about them that, uncertainty. And I think that in GovCon, there's a lot of different ways that you could go. And, you mentioned, contracts or businesses being here that are no longer here. And I think that, like you said, there'll be some more. And so there's always growth and the ability to evolve and adapt to where the government is going, because the government will always be here. So
Yeah. I mean, I think those are good points. And it is hard. When people ask me if they should get into GovCon, I always want to understand why, because I'm concerned that they've seen the War Dogs movie and they think that they can just go buy some stuff and sell it and never actually take, and then they have a yacht. But I, I think you're right that the government will exist in some format, and um, there is a barrier to entry. I mean,
for sure.
if you go and start any other business, anybody can decide to have a mobile detailing business. You get a trailer that has some stuff in it, and now you're in business, and you put a website up and get a TikTok account and whatever, and you're good to go. GovCon has a million things that are required to be
Boy,
able
do
to,
I know.
yeah, I mean, right?
Yeah,
And other businesses not that way. Now, some of them have some regulation. Like you want to open up a bar, you have to have a building, you have to get a liquor license,
right.
but it pales in comparison to what it takes to just run a compliant GovCon company.
Yeah, you've got to do a million things, a million and one, and you got to do it right. Or
you know, you know, I think every time I see one of those commercials about artificial intelligence, I think about that, right? I spend a fair amount of time on Reddit
Yeah,
in groups like everyone else, and I think that you know, how often are we using, some AI tool or large language model, not to, piss off the smart people, but you know, how many of us are using those? I know that we are, and
mhm,
because of it, I have absolutely not hired additional people, right? Or I've found ways to make it happen and provide compliance
Mhm.
with proposals, with all kinds of things across the board using large language model tools, or AI tools as they're commonly referred to. And so
Mhm.
it was just a time it clicked in my head to be like, think about all the people in the past that we would have needed to do things, right? Like we're using a small team to run, multiple ISO certifications across multiple companies, right? Like there's a
Yeah.
lot
Mhm.
that's moving, but when you think about it, you take a step back, it's because there are large language
Yeah.
model or AI tools that we can use that will
AI
bolster.
phone
So
assistants. Yep. Plenty of things. You could have
yeah.
your whole organization run by AI.
And
Scary part.
especially in something that is such detail oriented and repetitive, because
Mhm.
almost everything that we're talking about is policy or regulatory run. It's not like we're trying to make a decision even a lot of times on it. We're trying to correlate something to, does this match a contract labor category? Does this match a whatever? We
Yeah.
spent a zillion dollars and a bunch of hours on a labor category compliance system when I was at khaki. Shout out to Fred Rosen. He was in the middle of it, right? And there was this big story about Lockheed had gotten hit with this massive fine because somebody figured out that their employees didn't meet labor categories going back however many number of years. And it was I think it was 47 million was the number that we heard, where,
Ouch.
and that's not just
Right.
you lost your profit. That says that this whole team was not compliant. We want our money back. And they just had to write a check for it. So that's a pure bottom line hit of $47 million. Khaki built every person in the entire company, we're going to verify that they meet a labor category. And that then came down to people like me to sit and go through the people in my division and say that they did or didn't comply. A bot is better at that than a person is. There's so many of those things. I mean,
Yep.
I used to really value people that I knew were going to read a proposal, like Fred, frankly, that it was so hard to get somebody that had the mental stamina to sit there and read and go like, okay, these metrics are all supposed to be such and such. Let me go figure out if they're right. Bots are really good at that. They're
Mhm.
really good at figuring out if a resume meets a requirement. They're
For sure.
really good at going through every help desk ticket to see if any of them hit this, criteria for being excluded from a whatever. And when you pay people to do those jobs, you can't be really excited and committed most of the time to doing something that is so rote and routine. And I mean,
Mhm.
those jobs are terrible. Um, so I do think, and it's much more approachable to just get a bot, throw it on there, and have it give. You still have somebody look at it to look at the results, but it is dramatically easier and more approachable because as a small business, you can't hire a team to do everything. You don't have enough money. GovCon margins are not like
Yeah.
that. Um, so are you buying, I guess what I'd call like pre-canned solutions where somebody has come out with a bot solution that does something, or are you kind of rolling your own? We're getting a GPT Pro or Perplexity or whatever, and we're kind of building our own prompts and using it internally. What are you guys doing?
So our I've been using ChatGPT, and for the most part, I do use just my own internal prompts, whatever I need. I did propose a couple weeks ago that we use some website, no free branding, but for resume reviewing, and it does AI. And Mike was like, "I feel like we're gonna miss so many." Um, and then I seen another thing that was it was like it'll write all your SOPs for you. I was like, "Oh, let me look at that. Let me see." They want to screen record your screen. I was like, "This is a violation of so many things." So I'll pass on that too. So I think
Yeah.
that there's some ups and downs to the AI thing. I think it definitely depends on what field you're in. Maybe if you're a teacher, sure, put those kids, birth dates in there. But I think that in our field, there's a lot of things I can't put into ChatGPT. So,
Right. Right. Yeah, and there's a lot of privacy impact. There's a lot of, being very careful if you've got people that are on government site that are interacting with you and how that works and whether there's government data flowing in or out or not. And I also think it would increase the complexity on if you've ever looked into the CMMC compliance requirement for
Mhm.
DoD. I mean, implementing that to make sure that no controlled information comes into your
Yeah.
environment is really challenging. And if you had something that was automatically scraping your environment for information, I haven't tried to do that, but I can imagine that the complexity of that would go up significantly.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and I think they get away. I think we or the or client side, right? The best case you get, right, is that you're you're coalescing a bunch of SBU stuff that then ends up becoming something because of all of this stuff together, right? And so yeah, but having the wherewithal to know that, we had this contract one time where um it was during COVID, and sending people laptops and letting them work from home or vacation or wherever they were. And I think we were on some call and like dawned on us that um, a couple of the people they were U.S. citizens, of course, right, and had these jobs, but they were going to work the job, the contract job, from Israel or from some
Yeah.
other place that's not continental United States, right? And so uh, going through it just made me think about it. Going through those steps of even saying, okay, great, we get to hire from the greater when you can't send U.S. Devices, computers, and laptops and phones and stuff to a foreign country through the regular mail. That doesn't work. So I got stories for days about us trying to ship cameras to Afghanistan and all kinds of stuff, and it didn't work out well for us trying to do it outside of a diplomatic pouching. So it's complex, but I think that goes back to the point that Adam made earlier, where he was saying like the amount of things that can change. You can move your business from one county to another county, and that can change
Yeah.
everything. I'm not even talking about things like um, your insurance, right? We moved our business from across Fairfax or something like that, and it caused us to have to use a different health insurance company because the one we were using weren't covered in that area. Yeah, I had no idea that making that decision change would impact the health insurance that we would provide the people that work for the company. So, when we talk about moving something or changing something, and how you never know where the other leak is gonna spring, and that's why
Mhm.
staying on your toes and having free time, not doing monotonous over and over and over, operational work, being able to use bots to do it is a win-win. And I have no idea where actual artificial intelligence is going to go, or what are we calling AGI now,
Yeah.
right? So I have no idea where that's going to go, or how we would utilize that, or how would or how would that level the playing field for the government as far as writing proposals and meeting requirements, whether it be CMMI 3 or ISO certs. Once we're all using the same stuff and we're all responding to the same stuff the same way. you know I wonder how that will impact the way competitions are run.
So I'll give you a guess. I've seen so during after the drawdowns in procurement shops and some of the RIFs and all of that, I participated in a couple of procurements that were super abbreviated. It was here's our statement of work. We want you to deliver a price to us and a slide deck. We will pick 3 to 5. You're going to come in and give a half-hour pitch and answer questions. So I think that oral presentation, I think that tech demo are gonna
Proliferate, yeah.
proliferate. Yeah, because right, like so now anybody can sit down with a language model and come up with a tech solution. It's always been a problem, right? Because the government asks for 100 pages of approach on how you're going to build software or how you're going to do whatever. And the people that write that are not usually the software developers. So there was always this big handoff of who says what and how do you write it. And are the people that came up with this solution the ones that are going to show up and do it? I mean, I think that is technically a benefit of going with a really small company as opposed to a really large company because when you go with $1 billion corporation, you've got back then, people like me that were ops folks that were never going to set foot on the ground of the project, maybe that were writing and delivering solutions, and we had a whole room of architects and these kind of people, whereas the people that were going to show up and do the work were just somebody else from the company or somebody we're going to hire. When you go with a small business, eh, we're the ones that are talking about it, and we're the ones that show up. Um, one of the times that one of the programs that I won that was in Fort Benning, and I wrote the thing and I showed up and they said, "No, I don't know if you've seen this before." And no, I wrote that. That's me. Like, yeah, and because when she liked one of the graphics in it and had her pinned on her cubicle, and she was excited about that, and I was like, that makes me really happy because I drew that. So there, I think the only way you combat the idea of how do you make sure that this person did this is you got to have them stand in front of you or in front of you on video. Because like most FedSim procurements are oral presentation, but they are video recorded. Instead of having the people all show up in person, they put it on a video on a I don't know if it's a digital file now. It used to be a DVD you had to send in. And that way, it's the people, the key personnel are the only ones that are allowed to talk. And so these people that are supposed to show up and do the work are the ones that tell me how they're going to do it. And then I can ask them questions. I think we might see more and more of that because you're right. Like we could all sit down and crank out whatever. We could have GPT write us an approach to anything. And um, whether it works or not, we don't know, but it's credible and can score well.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Right.
there was a time where where we would say like if we can submit a compliant proposal priced well, we have a good shot.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case anymore, right? That's a compliant proposal is I mean it's always been the floor, but it's legitimately the floor now, even for small businesses, right? That was one of the things that you could identify as between, oh man, this small business writes really good proposals, right? They have it figured out. Well, these large language models completely levels the playing field, right?
Mhm.
And we can all submit a compelling proposal now. The pricing part is a whole nother thing, but
Right.
yeah.
Now I'm hoping though that because I know I've the demonization of AI and language models and oh that's terrible now everybody can do this. Frankly, we used to have everybody in the industry that just copied and pasted stuff, which is a really rudimentary same thing as using AI to do it because somebody else wrote it and somebody
Mhm.
else went in and copied it and dropped it in, and they might not even know what it means or what it says.
Right.
And I've gotten questions back on proposals before that when you go and look at that volume and they ask a question where something clearly doesn't make any sense, like, man, somebody copied this from somewhere, and they
Yeah.
then you miss it in the review. You don't because you're not as you as a reviewer, you never understand the government organization as well as the government does. And so when something comes up and says, well, we would house all of this from the Denver warehouse, when you're reading it as a reviewer, you're like, I guess there's a warehouse in Denver. The government goes, what warehouse are they talking about? Well, some other customer has a Denver warehouse, not this one. But you don't know that, and it slips through. Those are the kinds of things that slip
Yeah.
through and
Mm.
cut and paste that, frankly, I think, a bot as my catch-all term for all of that technology, a bot will do a better job of catching that and going like, I don't think they have, or I have no record of them having one there.
Right.
Yeah. Well, shit.
So another question that I have about the shutdown is so I watch some news. Mostly I don't watch news, but I watch some news where they talk about the impact on the federal employee. And historically, they always got paid when there was a gap in service, which I don't know if that's going to happen this time or not. Contractors, depending on their contract, either lucked out and always got paid completely or really got the short end of the stick, immediately got not paid, got laid off, got put on leave without pay or whatever. And there's sometimes I was in Arlington a couple weeks ago when this started, and they said if you're a government employee, you get a free pastry in this coffee shop. And the person that I was there with says, well, I'm a contractor, so it doesn't count for contractors. Of course it doesn't, right? that division of government employee versus contractor employee, and do you feel like you're all part of the same team or do you not? I mean, occasionally you might see a little bit of separation during a recompete or whatever. How do you see the shutdown and the dynamics of this one impacting the feeling of kind of camaraderie or partnership with you and your company and your people and your customers?
I guess I'm naive because I just considered that, man, everybody here is a contractor of some kind, right? And so if you gave everybody a free pastry, you would be out of business. So you have to limit it to somebody. I never considered that there was a line being drawn, but with I think through all the conversations I've had, right, is that there's the not to quote Amina, there's ups and downs to both, right? Like I don't think that you can have a successful contract without having a good relationship with the people you work with. I think it benefits the government side to have good relationships with the contractors they work with, and I think it benefits the contractors obviously to have good relationships with the people they're providing services to or supporting. And so if that relationship, if that relationship is damaged, right, then you're immediately setting yourself up for failure because the people who do your reviews are those folks, right? And yes, is there animosity? I think I have a contract where we have um, a specific group has to come in the office every day, but the other groups don't. And
Yeah.
so, there's animosity. Why do I have to come in the office, but these contractors don't, or whatever it may be? And it's like, oh, well, there's not enough seating, or there's not enough space to have all the contractors come in. And so, but the government employees are government employees, and they want to see them. But the contractors, so there's been, I'd say, over the past year, there's some tension that exists. But I think that that's where professionalism comes in, right? Like um, we're providing a service to them. Defense contractors or GovCon, government contractors, we're providing a service, and then there's a markup, and typically, on the contracts that we have, there's parity between what the government people make and what the contractors make, right? So, we're not we're talking about white collar, high end, well paid folks
Mhm.
for the most part, and so I'd say that professionalism has played well, I think, over the past several weeks in months, even if I had to go a little further, I think, with the Doge environment.
Yeah, see, and I've seen that all over the place. I've seen contractor folks that make way more than their government customers, and then there's some animosity there. The only time I've seen the opposite of that, um, I specifically had a team in Omaha, Nebraska, that always talked about how, the gravy train was getting one of these government positions because they pay so well. And that was different. Then there was kind of an animosity of like this wealthy government person is telling me what to do, and because the GS13, GS15 pay scale there was, 6-figure type jobs, and we didn't have any of those kind of jobs. Um, and so the contractor staff wasn't paid nearly as well as the government folks.
Right.
Um, I don't typically, see that. As a business team, business owners, is there separation between ownership of the business and the project staff when something like this happens? Do you feel more or less attached to the employees that you're talking to as things like this happen, and they're talking about concern for the project or concern for whatever, or is that something that doesn't hasn't really impacted you guys because of the sector of business that you're in?
Oh no, I mean, I think that the uncertainty is across the board. Like no one knows what's going to happen until it happens, right? Like during this furlough, now we're finding out that there's going to be maybe thousands more layoffs, and no one knows who that's going to impact. And so I think, and I think for those government employees who are talented, may look at the environment and say, why the heck should I stick around waiting when there's a possibility that I might not get paid. Where
Right.
and it's not like being a contractor. In some places isn't the end of the world, right? It's advantageous. If you work for a business that has several contracts across several agencies, mobility as a contractor is much easier than it is when you're a GS 13, 14, 15, or if you're some specific skill set, there might be a larger market for people who do that, who know that environment with contractors. So I mean that's my 2 cents or my take on it. I is all of this is a huge opportunity if depending on how you look at it. And so right now a lot of government customers are at home, drinking coffee, wishing they had something to do. And, at some point, hopefully they're going to go back to work. Wouldn't it be a great time to get in and talk to them about about what needs they have, or what shortcomings their current incumbent might have? I mean, all of it is an opportunity. It's just how you look at it, how you go about it, and what your relationship has already been. Right? Kind of hard to call somebody who you've been working with but don't know. So
Right. Well, that's so I find it immensely difficult to have a new business growth kind of conversation with somebody when because before previous shutdowns where they're like, look, I'm going to get paid. My dad always used to say, I've been shut down however many times and I've never missed a paycheck, right? With that not being true necessarily right now,
I think they'll get paid though.
you think
Like it's
so?
law, right? I think they'll get paid.
I think so.
So I said 28 days, right? 28 or 29 days, which makes me the positive, forward leaning one, right? So I'll stick with that and be consistent and say that, you know, I- hopefully there's some bluster in
Yeah,
in that, and they do get paid.
hopefully so.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amina.
No, I was just agreeing, I can't imagine how it feels, the uncertainty of if you're getting your paycheck or not. Listen, I may not be here tomorrow.
Considering the people that are still required to go to work, right? Like,
Exactly, exactly.
air traffic controllers, or military for, you know certain, so
That's
yeah. I
what I'm
mean,
thinking
I
about, right? You've been
yeah.
working still and you're uncertain of whether or not a paycheck is coming in. That has to be unsettling.
Yeah, your bill collectors aren't uncertain about whether or not you owe them or not, right?
Right,
So yeah,
Yeah.
right.
yeah.
Well, and that perspective, right? So as a person that grew up with, like it was you lived off of what you made kind of thing. That's one of those areas where I think GovCon is a little bit different, not always, but a little bit different in that you don't see the owners of GovCon companies with the significant flex, social media, in person, whatever, at least public, of look how much money my business makes. Because if you run a high end, whatever kind of company, IT, marketing, whatever, and you're in the commercial sector, if you made $8 million in pure take home money last year, the people you're interacting with and trying to sell to probably made a bunch too. If you're selling to big time, tier one commercial companies and you're trying to sell to a Marriott or a Hilton or whatever, the people that you're talking to at decision making levels are not exactly getting government cheese, right? Like, and I don't know if you know that's a thing like that. So folks in my family, like it's actually pretty good, but it's commodity cheese, that kind of stuff. So that's what my reference is. But if you made $8 or $9 million in your business take home profit, the people you're selling to commercially are high up corporate executives that were making a lot of money too. On the GovCon side, if you made $8 million take home money last year, you are talking to people that you can look at their salary, depending on the GS13, GS15, 120-ish thousand dollars a year, 150-ish. You see exactly what they make. And so there is a delineation. And that's one of those things that I think can make project staff feel more like the government than they feel like your company sometimes, depending on the conduct or the whatever of the leadership. Um, Now, I don't see a lot of people pulling up with Lambos or whatever in front of government office buildings, and I think it's for that reason, maybe.
Oh, Yeah, I'm not because they don't own them though.
Not because they don't own them. I, oh,
Yeah.
trust me, some of them own them.
Imagine, right? Imagine, you pull up and you get out of your Lamborghini, right? And you go on the customer site and you say, "Hey, listen, Adam, I'm gonna need some rate relief. I'm gonna need some rate relief because I can't afford to pay this system engineer or whatever, right? Well, this software developer or this project manager the salary they want." So I maybe as a small business, right? Like as a small business for sure. I mean the goal, I don't have it, to pull up to the customer site in some super hyper exotic car and then tell the government, "Hey, listen, I need some rate relief," or, "Hey, I can't do it for that price." It just makes it a more difficult, a very difficult conversation to have, especially when you're dealing with people who make, they're not buying Lamborghinis with their government salaries.
No, no, and you're right. A lot of times, GovCon, especially when you bill by the hour, is a it's a business of individual dollars and cents, not big dollars that drive change. And it is my service desk person. I need another labor category that is 45 cents an hour more. And you're right. If you pull up in a McLaren, that why don't you just get rid of
You're
that?
right.
And
Yeah,
that I think
yeah.
would be very hard to um how do you debate that, right? Like my business made enough to buy a $2 million supercar. I nobody in the government is then going to feel any kind of sympathy for you that you need rate relief. Even if you did a market analysis and said that yeah, legitimately this person fits this other category, there would be a feeling that that's not.
And
And that's not what you
and
want.
they
It also makes it hard to explain to an employee why you can't give them an extra $2,000 this year.
Very good point. It's the other side of it, right? Very good point. All good points. All good points.
Yeah.
I haven't purchased a $2 million McLaren, but if and when I do, I hopefully won't have to drive it to client site, right? Like, well, I'm I'm sure we'll be able to find something else to ride, and maybe not as nice as the SUV we rented in Montana, but you know.
That thing was rounded off on all the corners with the window busted. Yeah, that was entertaining.
I, I didn't think it was the car we were supposed to be getting. I thought we were just walking up to a random car in the parking lot, and I was like, "Is this the rental?" He goes, "I think this is it." And I was like, "Holy smokes! Like this is crazy." But it's imagine just getting into a random car in the parking lot.
Yeah, and it was not that we had rented it from some company that was some off-brand company. It was a pure, like it was a in the airport, had a desk, real rental company, and all of that. It was it was just made up. That's all you get there, I guess.
That's disrespectful.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now, I will tell you, I have been around GovCon owners that either had courtside seats at Wizards games, and then you have a customer come back and go like, "Hey, I saw so and so. Seems like it's going well. I saw them courtside at the Legends." I think that stuff does have a direct impact, which is interesting because I think that flex actually helps commercially. I think if you're trying to sell to Ford or one of these big Fortune 100 companies, I think demonstrating success through wealth probably helps you. In GovCon, I think it's the opposite. I don't think it helps you at all.
Yeah, yeah. I worked for a large integrator, and I wonder how much of it is true, how much of it is a rumor, but that there was like an executive that showed up and some at the time would be considered ridiculous. I don't know what the litmus is for what a really nice car is in 2025, but pulled up in some nice car and completely like offended the client because there had been issues with bill rates and bringing people on for that rate, and so after that they had them all have like black cars, so everyone got driven to customer sites so that they didn't have to drive their personal cars and offend the government customer by whatever they drove or
I
whatever
took
sticker or
over
license plate was on the car.
Yeah, I took over a program from a guy that had a whatever at the time super high end Corvette was. Like the not you go to the Chevy dealership and you get a Corvette. Like it's some kind of super built something Z something or other that was.
Yeah.
If a regular Corvette at the time was, I don't know, 60, this one was probably 120, right? And they didn't like him. And when that customer basically said, if this person is still running ops down here, well, you guys aren't going to have this contract. And so they handed it off to me. And when I went down there, I heard directly from the customer, so and so with their Corvette and their whatever. And I drove a Dodge Durango, and that didn't seem to be intimidating to them. And so I think if anybody ever sees that, you're right. Like, um, it comes across as real tone deaf, I think, which
Yeah.
is one of the big divides that you always have when you have an executive team that hasn't been doing that kind of work for a long, long, long time, or maybe never doing it. Something, they just were always executive leadership or something, and they've never been really a direct project employee.
Oh, I'll make sure to never make that mistake then.
Yeah, if you leave from
That's how you put
McLaren,
it.
I would recommend that you just park it at the Metro and then Metro
Yeah,
down. Yeah,
that's a good idea. Yeah.
that's what I would do. Yeah, we've been there's been a Facebook back and forth in a private message forum about there was an officers conference. I won't go ahead and put anybody's names out there this time, but there was an officers conference that I attended, and it was so I was like 29 or 30, right? And so I was the youngest person in the room by a long stretch, to the extent that I kid you not, when I walked in, they asked me if I was there to hook up the projector for the slide. And I was like, no, no, I'm one of y'all, and which they didn't exactly believe. But so during this, they end up, the CEO of the business, now $1 billion company, the CEO of the company stands up to talk to us about customer service. At the time, I mean, I'm probably making a little bit over 100, but I'm not exactly rolling around in money and whatever. And no stock, no anything. Like I'm working 60 hours a week and driving back and forth to DC, and I'm on project sites all the time. And right, like
Yeah.
I I don't believe I owned a nightstand. Okay. So I would just tell you, like, that's kind of what my life structure looked like. So this dude stands up and he wants to give us a message about customer service. And he says, you want to be like my guy Guillermo, who is my handyman. First off, now this is not a super elitist flex, right? Because some people have handymen, but I'm like, I, I change all my own stuff when it breaks because I'm paying a mortgage and whatever. But okay, cool. You got, all right, Guillermo. In my condo in Miami that overlooks the ocean. Really? I live in Springfield in a fallen down house that doesn't have any insulation in it. And I'm replacing electric plugs because the cords fall out when you plug stuff in. And I'm working for a guy who tells me that he, in addition to working and having a place in the DC area, he also has a condo that overlooks the ocean in Miami. I don't have either one of those. And now he's going to tell me how good his handyman Guillermo is. Then he says, Guillermo, he was doing painting for me. Oh, I do my own painting. That makes me feel connected to you. Then he says, I have these blinds that go all the way around these panoramic windows that look out on the ocean. Okay, now I feel like I really want to go to work for you, right? Like now I'm gonna try harder. The motor in them broke. He has motorized blinds that overlook the ocean, and he's telling me about the customer service skills of his handyman who fixes them. And I'm just sitting there like, man, you should pay me more. If that's what the company does, that you have enough to have motorized blinds in a penthouse, whatever, that overlooks the ocean in Miami, plus wherever you live here in DC, I guarantee you is nicer than where I live. And he just went on and just talked about it. And we all got out of there, and all of us sat down like, man, we're all getting back in our Honda Accords and our old Broncos and our whatever, driving out of the parking lot. Like, man, how exactly are we supposed to take that message and now go do a better job? And it made all of us feel like us and these government folks are all like, it's us. And then it's this guy that made probably, you could look at the stockholder statements. He made 7, 8, $9 million. And we certainly didn't. But that kind of tone deaf.
Yeah,
But like, how do you get to a point where you decide that you're going to stand up and talk about that and not realize that like that's not a relatable story for people?
change an audience, right?
Mhm.
Like when if you're the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, right? You have a different audience, right? Like you work here. He works for the chairman, right? The board, and they don't care about whether or not Adam
No.
has a repairman or not, right? That guy, you know. Speaking of tone deaf, it was during sequestration, right? This is a while back, but it's
Yeah.
a relevant story. So sequestration, I remember getting the emails like, "Hey, our stock is up." Record levels, right? And they would tell you like you're doing a great job. The stock is up, right? And then you come around for your yearly review, and they would be, hey, listen, our government counterparts aren't receiving pay raises, so we don't think that it's appropriate that the contractors receive pay raises. What? I have not once ever had someone say, "Hey, Mike, they just got cola or whatever, and it's going up 4%, and we just decided it's appropriate. We're gonna match it. We're gonna match you to your." And so I think that's similar to what you were talking about, Adam, is the audacity you feel like, right? Which is
Yeah.
probably one of the reasons I was like, well, if I'm gonna do all the hard work, I might as well do it for myself, right? And that's where the inspiration from trying to create my own thing comes from.
Well, and having done it, because I also think any business, if you have done it, when you lead a company, if you want to lead a company, because just because you do something doesn't mean you ought to run a business in it. But if you actually have the interest and uh,
A
the eff
stamina.
the stamina, really, yeah, yeah, because it ain't easy, right? But if you actually have done it, you will run a better business doing that. And if you just show up and don't understand the details, I think that's why every episode of Bar Rescue that I watch, where somebody decided to open a bar, right? And they have no idea what they're doing, but they think that they're good at whatever, and they don't do it. They don't get in the middle of it. They don't understand it. And then somebody tries to explain a problem, and they just go like, "Well, just figure it out." And then they don't know why they're out of business. And then Taffer yells at them, and then I I do think understanding it is a big part of having a successful business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where when you asked earlier, you said, um would I still tell someone that they should do this industry, right? Like the reason I would tell you not to do this business is not because of the government shutdown. That that is not the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is all the things that you couldn't possibly know if you haven't done it.
Exactly.
It's and it's hard to explain to people, right, when they come on board, like what do you do? Okay, well, what does your company do? All right, well, what do these people do? And you say, well, all these people do different things. This person does that. It depends on what day it is. I'm doing this or I'm doing that. And it's right. And so and then when you all have like 25 or 30 people that work for us, or 40 or 50 or however many it is, we still answer our own phones. You still, because it's when my customer calls me, I don't want them to have to wait and get to somebody else. I have to answer the phone. I mean, that's one of the big selling points that I think that we sell with small business. Pendulum swings between large and small, whether they like you or
Mhm.
not. But I think the large business approach as a small business, or the small business approach with the large business attitude, right? Has taken us far, and I think it'll continue to take us further because that's what people are accustomed to interacting with, right? Not your fly by night operation or our fly by night operation, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, and that whole continuing to learn and having to learn stuff, and I mean, I know that you do a lot of the, your business of ISO and compliance and all of that, and you use a tool, like you said, to do that. But
Mhm.
what was the learning curve for that? I mean, that's a sector of the business, and it's a compliance piece. Most
So
people that get into ISO, get into all that, they end up finding themselves in it. They didn't grow up deciding they wanted to do it. But so
interesting to know. Yeah, yeah.
what did that growth curve and figuring that out, what did that feel like?
It was crazy. I'm gonna tell you. So because it's so straightforward, it's confusing that it's not that straightforward. The curve was Mike kept saying, it's compliance is doing what you said you did. And I hope I don't sound slow, but I didn't realize. I'm like, where did we say we did it? Like where is it all? Like it's in this 60-page document. I don't want to read that. And then it's not even like you have to know what you're looking for to even know to look for. Like there's so many things about compliance. I think that definitely the learning curve is just finding out exactly what specifically our business is doing, and if you're in compliance and whatever your business is doing and how it applies to whatever framework it is, and then just doing it repeatedly. I think that because otherwise there's no playbook, there's nothing that you can Google or ask. Like you have to know what we said we were going to do, and you have to thoroughly read everything. And that's why I think that Vanta, and being AI, it makes it so much easier because it laid out everything, and I can be like, you know what, this whole control doesn't apply to us, and it'll just remove every single document, so I don't have to be confused and track controls and be like, does it? It's great.
Did it make it easier did it make it easier with the with your review? Have we've gone through reviews yet for your recertifications? And has using the application or the app made it easier or
Yeah,
par for the course? Or?
100% easier. Also because last year I had a 2013 MacBook Pro, and that was the slowest thing ever. But upgrading to Vanta definitely made everything easier. They were able to look at everything prior to the audit, so it was kind of just asking for things that maybe they didn't see or it was in a different spot. But it made things 100% easier. And then even after, when they sent us our certifications, I just uploaded them directly into Vanta, and it closed out the audit. It was great.
So it actually integrates with, like, maintaining the certificates and all that?
Yep.
That's handy.
Yeah.
I've had a
Yeah,
lot of proposal efforts where, like, you were scrambling around trying to find one because not every proposal asks for them, and so I swear we have this someplace, but that's cool to have them all in one spot.
Yeah, and SharePoint search engine, I hate it. I hate SharePoint search engine. I don't know. So I love Vanta because when I search for something, it comes up immediately and I'm able to find it, pull it up. It has version history, um, what data was approved and everything. So it's great.
So does it keep so all of your kind of governance documents for all the different ISO standards, so they all reside in Vanta? So it's not just a compliance, it's also the archive of where all your processes go?
Correct. Yep.
That's cool. Now, if you since you've been using it, did you start with all the standards or have you added any? Like, do you start with the baseline? If you wanted to add another certification, does it just add on top of it or
Yes, it does. So we already had 9,001 and 27,001. So those were the base frameworks that we were like, we need those for sure. But we want to, I think 17 and 18, we're working towards those. And so it shows you what things line up basically, and so it'll be like both of these things are needed for this control. um and so if we were to add, CMMC or anything else, HIPAA, it would say, you're 65% of the way towards having a HIPAA thing. You just need these additional documents.
so it's not just an ISO framework tool, it's a
Yes,
compliance framework tool.
correct.
Ah, that's cool. Yeah, because CMMC. So I started doing that. So back at Highlight, I got an invite to be part of one of the like early industry working groups that was doing CMMC, and it we were already ISO 27000 compliant. And so I figured it probably wouldn't be that hard, but you had to have direct mapping of every control, and
And
that was the problem because
that's the
I
hard part.
yeah, I'd always, like, handled a lot of the ISO 27000 controls with, like, that's done by our onboarding, offboarding process. You can go look at that over. And then no, CMMC was like every NIST control we've got to have direct, mapping to it. Oh, so
Mhm.
that's cool. So it does. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
It's like weight
Yeah.
off the shoulders. That I
Not to
think
be not
that
please
uh,
continue, please.
I would definitely say that the mapping the controls is definitely the learning curve, and it makes it a ton easier that it does it for me. I'm glad that I had, a first go around doing it myself. But the AI platform definitely makes it tons easier.
well, because if you don't have that, one of the frustrating things I've always had about all these governance documents is I don't want to have the same thing mentioned in multiple ones because now I have
Exactly.
5 different areas where I control of records I have to
You
update.
have to check, yes.
Yeah, and the amount of time it takes to go back and forth, and I happen to have a document set that I've like for 9, 20, 27, a couple of the other ones. I'm used to the ones that I built years ago working with this guy Devin, and so I kind of know where stuff is. But once you turn it over to a team, like to get it stood up, it's okay to go with the starting set and kind of know where things are. But when you turn it over to a team, when you have multiple people, when they change a standard and now
Yep.
you have to add something in, um, have it that sounds highly beneficial. So
Mhm. And
that's cool.
it allows you to add everyone in there. You can assign stuff to employees. It truly is a great platform. I'm so glad that I found it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of Amina's other tasks is find out all the places and ways I can automate something so that we
Mhm.
don't have to do it, right? And so that was one of the first ones, and I'm glad she found it. It saved us, and adding additional ones, it ends up becoming a benefit,
Mhm.
for us, right? So
Mhm.
if ever the government opens and the opportunity to shape comes up again, what a great way to say, hey, listen, these certs that none of your competitors have, that none of my competitors have. It's a way to differentiate and maybe give us a edge when it comes to competing, right? Because you can't chat GPT per se your way into having a certification that you
Right.
haven't done
Right.
already. So
Yeah, I mean that has been always that kind of having a certification that somebody else doesn't have is such an easy way to shape a procurement. And if it's the kind of work where there really is value, I've seen that done on ISO 20000 because there's, user support and IT service management that would benefit from that. And I got an award out of USCIS once with ISO 44000 in it. And they were able to justify a directed award because I was the only ISO 44000 certified vendor that they could find, and it was nobody else was all that excited about it. I felt like I had picked a car up over my head with my 2 hands. Like, look at this, right? Like I had that idea and we got certified and yeah, but it can be really really beneficial. I think you run your company better when you have ISO certs and it forces you to have some
Mhm.
attention to how you do things. And it's hard to argue when somebody pulls one of those standards out and you're like, you should have an access list for who has access to sensitive information. Yeah, it's probably a
Oh,
good
okay, I got
idea. Yeah, like I can't argue that that's a bad idea. Hey, you should double check that the resources you assign to something are have been trained and or have the skills that they need.
mm,
Yeah, that's probably a good point. Like so I feel like ISO specifically, I feel like the guidance that they have because they're not so super prescriptive in how you do it. Uh,
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily extend that to everything that's in like a CMMI or a CMMC because that gets a little more prescriptive. And I feel like there are times where you're kind of just being compliant. And so you're having to almost apply something that doesn't really have a lot of business value. But ISO, I don't feel like drives you to do that if you do it correctly. Um, So now, are you guys all caught up on when are your audit cycles? You done with everything externally for a year, or do you have?
We are done for this year. And now that we're completely integrated into Vanta, anything that needs to be updated, it'll come up, send us a little email. And so hopefully everything goes smoothly for next year too. There won't be too much that we need to go in and update or fix or so.
So if somebody wanted to check out Vanta, is that a do they have a professional services team that helps you stand up? Is it just a subscription and you go create an account and start? What's that look like?
They do. You have to, I mean, I'm not super familiar with the whole process. I think that I reached out for a demo. I did a couple demos with a couple different similar companies and decided on Vanta. And then we got started ASAP. I think they sent over a contract. And then that was that. They do have like a customer success team, so they had people answer our questions, um, and we had plenty. So, and then even now, if I have questions, I can reach out to someone and get them on the phone or on a meeting. It's pretty great.
But is it something so, like, let's say that I sat down with Vanta pulled up and was going to try to start with, ISO 9000 or whatever. Is it intuitive enough that you can just sit down and start feeding it documents that you have, or is there some kind of web training for a week that I need to take
Oh,
before I get going?
no, I'm gonna tell you, I procrastinated an extreme amount. I did not. I waited a long time to read up on any of the resources that they offered. Um, And even when I did it, it was like, that was a little helpful, but nothing. It's completely user intuitive. It's clearly labeled, so you can see the frameworks, the controls, the documents. You can sort things by the owner of the document or the task. You can sort things by due date, by framework. Um, so you can look at a ton of different things, and it also tells you, it runs tests for you, so to make sure that you're compliant. It does a bunch of stuff, and it's pretty pretty simple. I do think that you need to, if you have, I don't, if you're, I don't know. I think it's pretty intuitive. I don't think that there's too much training that you need to read up on to be able to, if you do your company's compliance, I don't think there'll be too much that you need to read up on to get in there and make things comply. I think our hardest struggle was finding things, um, because we had a change in management. And so there's a ton of things that I just had to either get created or find. And that was the hardest hurdle.
Yeah, I think this year was unique as well too because we were switching from 2015 to the 2022 version. So there
Yes.
was that, and there was a different subset of documents that were required, and we did the same thing that most people do, right? Is where you have a framework and you have documents, and now you're trying to move, and you're trying to move your whole system into something else, and now you got to map your previous documents that have
Yeah,
different
because
language.
so that's the thing. They have different names. So like some things are very simple. Management review is still called management review, but certain things like evidence documentation, they called it one thing. And in our SharePoint, it's called something completely different. So looking to find um, exactly what they're talking about was a little bit difficult, but me and ChatGPT, we did it together. I was like, what do you think that this is? What could this be? And I was able to find most of the things that we needed.
Well, and the times I've had to step in someplace and try to take over a management document structure, that hard part is that there's so much of it that is the person before you, the way they just chose to do
Mhm.
it, and it's not the standard that's the problem. It's the what made sense to them and what they were used to. Like you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out all of these different documents. And so it's cool. I that also it would probably be helpful. I'm guessing that if you had something like like Vanta set up, it's probably easier to both scale your team, that if the company grew dramatically and you needed to have a couple people supporting the quality structure,
Mhm.
you could probably add people in and it's all in a tool and they could use it. But also, if you ever had to transition that to somebody else, it would probably
Yeah,
be
it'd
way
be
easier for you to say, hey, look, here's where all this stuff is. Here's what it is. And they can, move on with it as opposed to it may be anywhere in SharePoint. And like you say, you can't find it, and search just pulls up old versions of documents and whatever
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
a good continuity of operations tool, right? And there's some other creative ways that you can use it. And so a bunch of what we call it, trades, trade craft,
Hmm.
of the industry. That 44,000 one is a favorite.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. And I plug for myself. So October 23rd, I think it is, I'm a speaker at the uh, ASAP organization, which is the kind of the notional sponsor of 44,000. I'm speaking at their conference on the 23rd, talking about forming alliances and how you select strategic partners and so forth. So they're an organization that has had a lot to do with ushering the 44,000 standard. And it's interesting because when you talk to a lot of companies, a lot of big businesses have alliance professionals that's their whole job. And it's because, like, if you're in pharmaceuticals and your alliance is that you need a supply of some kind of a precursor chemical material for the next 25 years. If you're building, the people that do utilities and power plants and stuff end up in part of that organization because they are signing agreements for right of way for power lines or whatever. And so those kinds of organizations, because in our industry, you go team with somebody and win a deal, and whether you do or you don't is whether you win the deal or don't. And so what you might work with them, you might not. It's just a different dynamic. And so some of 44,000 has this really mature alliance thinking, and it's because these people, they sign agreements for 20 years to work with each other and entering new markets and countries and all that. So I'm speaking at that on Thursday, and right before we all head down to Richmond. So that'll be fun. But well, I guess based on our current estimates, we think that government's going to be shut down for a little while longer. So I guess we'll have to see if next episode we start to record if we are hopefully back open for everybody. But with that, we'll go ahead and get this one wrapped up, get it posted, and catch up with everybody when hopefully the government is back open.
Hey, listen, man, we might have to do some kind of charity event, right? Where as far as every number it goes up that we're off, we have to like walk a mile or something and donate to charity.
Can I redo mine?
because you guys went high. That's why. I
Well,
was
You know
gonna say
what?
push-ups, but I thought push-ups was too much, right? Walking is reasonable. You got steps and pedometers. You can do that.
yeah, we're up into we've guessed numbers in the 30s, man.
What the record is, what is it, 31 or 32?
It's around there because it's not much more than a month.
So you guys are both betting that we're gonna break the record,
I
right?
mean,
If you're
the
above
Democrats,
31.
what are they
I
doing?
think so. I mean, because I think what we're at now is, it's, at least my recollection of shutdowns from the past is that we were talking about the argument of should we continue to spend money or not spend money. And this, I don't feel like, I think this feels like we're not going to approve this until you allow us to add these things on. And the other side has said no. And it's a very, in the past, I feel like it went to whether you wanted to be fiscally very conservative or not, and it wasn't necessarily a purely political party issue. It kind of went to whether or not you fiscally believed that the government should spend more than it makes or not, and that was kind of a fundamental aspect of it. I don't know that anybody's going to blink for a while on this one. I mean, obviously, I don't know, but that's kind of what it feels like.
It
I mean, do
does.
you feel differently, or you think?
No, I agree. That's why I said 42 days or 40, whatever I said, because it's looking, it's
You
not looking
know,
like we're moving anywhere in either direction. So
No.
yeah, we'll see.
So,
We'll
no,
see.
no, Mike, 42 miles, a lot of walking.
well, it'd be minus the 17. If it ended today, it would only be. I'm not good
Yeah,
at quick
25
math.
for you,
Yeah.
right? 11
Well, but you have all these Ranger Shuffle stories about doing whatever and going for forced marches for across, big
Right.
distances. That's not
You,
really
you,
something I've had to do.
you were telling a story. I was gonna tell I have a land navigation certification from the United States Marine Corps story when you brought up labor categories, but maybe I'll save it for another time.
We'll hit that next week. I love
For
that
sure.
one.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, and
All right.
maybe we can have that in lieu of having to walk 35 miles. So,
I like that idea.
all right, we'll see.
We'll see.
All right,
All right,
good
guys.
talking to you
Thank you.
guys. We'll catch you all next week.
Sure.
Catch you all next week.